Retirement communities with care and support are a modern solution to quite a modern problem, and that really is the issue of increased longevity. But how can we create environments where people can more effectively care for themselves, or environments that ultimately might reduce the need for care in the first place?
I've spoken to a number of people well in their 80s who've said, you know, we should have moved 10 years ago, but there wasn't anything that we wanted in the location that we preferred. And now, it's just all too much. So I think there's a poverty of choice for people. I think we need more choices, but I think people need information as to how they can improve their existing house, but also how to make a timely move.
There's a significant shortfall of extra care housing. The work that the Housing Linn has done for the Local Government Association suggests that there are at least 400,000 more homes for extra care housing needed between now and 2030. We need a catalyst for change, and part of the reason why we commissioned these videos was to showcase what's best in class, but also to identify ways to maximise new growth and new supply in the sector.
There is a lot of choice at the luxury end of the market, and there are certain choices for social housing. There's nothing in between, and what we find is when we build these schemes, we get an awful lot of home owner occupiers coming and asking, is it possible for us to come in? And of course, that, you know, with it being social housing, there are constraints.
I think if we try and say, you know, we need to build better, we need to, you know, call it something different, most of those debates ignore the fact that actually if more people decided to move to extra care schemes, there would be nowhere to move to.
I think in terms of looking to the future, housing providers really do need to ask themselves what the needs and aspirations of residents in the future is going to be like. So one example of that is digital.
We've had projects with Belgium where they build technology into their provision. So very interactive screens that people can use, but also they've got their whole medication provision in a sort of built into a sort of technological way. So I want to learn from that. And what I really want to bring here, and I know it's quite well known now, Hoogewijk in Holland, which is the dementia village. So that's almost going beyond extra care. So it's building in the extra care philosophy, but in a sort of protective environment.
More and more people are being diagnosed with dementia, so there will be more and more demand for suitable accommodation for those people. And again, sort of well designed, taking into account all the dementia design principles. Urban living and town and city centre living, I think, is going to become more and more common.
What I'm really keen on is the nurseries. So actually bringing nurseries into our schemes I think would be brilliant. I really believe that it's a really good option for residents as well as nurseries. Where we have day centres that may have closed down. The worst thing is that you have empty spaces, and actually if there's a local business, a local nursery that could utilise that, a great thing for them, a great thing for our residents, better an offer for our staff as well that you might not even realise. That's how we always start things. There's a reason why we can't do something? No? Okay, we'll explore it then. So it's a good way to start.
What we're starting to see is where older people are actually starting to commission accommodation themselves. And I think we'll probably see a growth in things like self-build, cooperative style housing, where we're building mutual communities. I think that people are themselves as community builders, not just as passive recipients of care or accommodation.
For a lot of the time we're thinking about where shall I live? But the bigger question is how? How will I live? How do I want to be supported? Who do I want to live with me? But wouldn't it make sense if we maybe pooled our resources and thought about living together? We can share a car, we can share our books, we can cook together. When we're fed up with each other, we can shut the door. But we've got people there, and our future is not one of loneliness.
I think we will start to see more diversity in extra care housing for specific groups of people with dementia, LGBT plus individuals, women only, certain religious groups. I think we'll start to see bigger schemes. I think we've already started to see bigger schemes. Extra care housing does have the potential to be a solution for a lot of people, not everyone. But if it's going to be a solution, we need to fund it like it can be a solution.
So I think the uncertainty in the social care and housing space, when we call it that, I think makes it hard for investors to see this as an attractive opportunity for them. And I think just, maybe government needs to do something to encourage people to see this as an attractive area for investment, because I think, without that surety, without that confidence, the big investors are not going to come in.
Particularly, I think, for extra care, planners can turn themselves into knots, thinking, so is this housing or is it care? I think we need some opening out of the use classes, maybe some specific use classes which talk about older people's housing, something which speaks to the flexibility of these kinds of dwellings and crosses that binary between is it housing or is it care. You think, well, actually it's a meld of both, and can't we understand that in planning terms?
But if they have dementia and have lost the mental capacity to control their own environment, one might argue that there ought to be some kind of regulation supporting them to control that environment, and that doesn't exist at the moment. So from that perspective as well, there is an argument for extra care having its own legal status.
Part of the problem is budgets aren't joined up, so integration will help, but I think also it needs a longer term strategy than that.
The really important thing is to really get away from this short-term view and short-term reactions. A more strategic view is really something that nettle really has to be grasped.
There's got to be an appetite on the side of policymakers to believe what the housing sector are saying to them. I guess I would like them to have an understanding of what extra care housing is, so that's what it can offer both the individual and society as a whole, and actually that needs to be properly funded if it's going to reach its potential.
I'm a member of the party that put the government in, but I still feel, and I do say this to my own MP, I wish you realised that there are lots of people, ordinary folk, that we talk to. We know a bit more about things than you do sometimes. Please listen to us. Please listen to us, because sometimes you're missing a trick.
I'd like extra care to be more mainstream. I think the government doesn't do enough to make it mainstream. I do think the private market, as it adapts to the model, hopefully we'll get better knowledge of it. People will understand it, even if they don't understand it under the same term. If we could get extra care to be something that people knew about, they aspired to live in, then people would choose it for themselves. And therefore people would be empowered more. It should be something that people want to do. And if we get the message across, hopefully they will.
Flexibility and choice is really something I think the sector already delivers, but we need to become even better at. And I think what we really need to do is come up with products that older people want, that older people aspire to. Are we creating the right choices? Are we creating the right options? Are we creating the flexibility around that? Is something that is going to become more important. But I'm quite confident that we'll get to that stage, because there's already plenty of good practice out there, and I think it's the start of a long journey.